Hi, this is Timothy Zahn, author of Thrawn, and you're listening to Star Wars Reactions. Good for you.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello there. Welcome to Star Wars Reactions. We are back having a great time today. We are going to have a great show. We are just continuing to roll through our March reactions madness as we keep getting Star Wars after Star Wars after Star Wars. It's just insane and it's wonderful at the same time. So we're not going to hold back. My name is Aaron Harris, and not joining me is my buddy David Motters, my co-host. He is, for those of you who are not aware, it is spring break here in Florida where we reside. So David is on a well-deserved and previously planned trip with his family, getting some time away, which after the year he's had so far is definitely needed and welcomed for him. I'm happy he's gotten to go on this trip. But never fear, you don't get to hear me ramble by myself. Joining me, of course, is a longtime friend of the show. He is the host of the ColbyCast, which is a podcast, a place for community and conversation about pop culture and storytelling. You can hear that wherever you get your podcast from. But don't waste any time. Please help me give a huge Star Wars reaction welcome to the incredibly awesome Colby Mead. Colby, welcome to Star Wars Reactions.
Aaron, thank you so much. I'm not sure I can live up to that fantastic introduction, though. So, I may have to slip you like a 20 or a 50 through Venmo or something, but I'll try my best. And thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. You're on the show, so we'll just call it even. So, we got a great show today. We're going to be discussing the latest episode of The Bad Batch. This episode is entitled Pabu, which was, of course, released March 15th of 2023, directed by Stuart Lee and written by Amanda Rose Munoz. This episode, of course, for give you a brief synopsis of it, after working a job for Genoa Fee, the Bad Batch joined her on an island settled by Imperial refugees. There they find peace and relaxation and a glimpse of hope for the future. But it's short-lived, however, as a series of quakes cause a tidal wave, which will end up coming and wiping out the lower portion of the island. But thanks to Clone Force 99, everyone escapes to safety, and they decide in the end to stay a while and help them rebuild. So let's get into it. Colby, as our guest, let me give you the floor. What were your initial reactions when you sat down and watched this episode of The Bad Batch?
Well, first, I'll say that I'm a big fan of Star Wars animation. I missed the boat on the Clone Wars. I didn't watch it as it was coming out, although my two sons, who joined me on the ColbyCast, and we talk about all kinds of fun stuff, they did. They loved it. They watched it week by week. When the Clone Wars was coming out, I missed the boat on that, and it wasn't until it was getting ready to leave Netflix, if you remember those days, that I decided, hey, I don't know when I'm going to be able to see this again, so I'm going to binge through this thing. And boy, did I regret not hopping on board in the first place, because just from the start right there, Star Wars animation has just won me over, and I've been a fan since the 80s. I'm one of those guys. And I just loved so much about everything about the Clone Wars. Then, of course, Rebels was the follow-up, just a worthy successor. Again, just took my love for the animation even further. Star Wars Resistance, even the short two season show that they gave us with that there's so much to love. So really, that's my perspective with Star Wars in general, is when I watch a Star Wars, I'm that 8-year-old kid watching Return of the Jedi again, and I just love it. I do. I'm one of those lucky fans that just eats everything up, and I do come at it from the fans' perspective. And nothing has changed with the Bad Batch. I have taken that same mindset and just the way that I approach Star Wars into the Bad Batch. So I've really enjoyed every episode so far of the series, and this one is no exception. I mean, it was gorgeous to look at, and I'm just floored, Aaron, every time I see another Bad Batch episode, just how far the animation has come, how beautiful it is. So it's like moving art, really, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And this episode might be one of the most beautiful of the series, just with the sunset tones and the different colors that are used throughout the entire episode. So that was really one of the high points for me on this episode. But right along with it is the sounds and the music just went hand in hand, because there were like wind chimes in the background. You could hear animals, making their various noises. And it was I wanted to, when I rewatched the episode, because I've seen it twice, I wanted to stop it like right before the earthquake, just because I'd like to go here on vacation. This is it's almost like you're reaching Zen when you're watching the beginning part of this episode with how beautiful it is. And of course, by the end of the episode, I couldn't help but ask myself, like, could this be home for these characters, right? And we know that there's still a ways to go. We don't know how everything is resolved yet. The series has stories to tell still, but boy, oh boy, they have introduced an option into the Bad Batch storyline where I could see them settling down and being happy the rest of their existence, and nothing would make me happier, to be quite honest.
Oh, wow. Well said. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you're in good company, because I missed out on most of the Clone Wars too. I didn't actually start watching till about the end of the 4th, 5th, and beginning of the 5th season. So you're in good company here. But yeah, this is definitely an episode that had probably the best animation, the best coloring, the best just absolute beautiful artwork that I've seen. I'll go ahead and say it. I think it's probably the best we've seen this season, in this, or not even this season, but in the series so far, because it was just so picturesque. And you're right. I would want to go there on vacation.
Yeah,
I would move there and retire, no problem whatsoever. Because it was just absolutely breathtaking. The scenery, the sunsets, the waves, even Omega and I just blanked on the child's name that she was with, just floating on the boat watching the sunset. Oh my gosh, so well animated, so well drawn, so well colored. And not only the color, the lighting and everything was just perfect in the episode. As for the story, I thought it was a great story. It was good. It was a nice change of pace, because we've had several very action-packed, suspenseful episodes, very deep episodes that have made you think and made you really emotional. And this was a nice change of pace, a little more mellow, a little more set back, which was nice. We got to see Omega be a kid again, which is something we don't get to see a lot in the series. But it was just so much fun to see it happening. And they're doing something, and they did something else in this episode that I've enjoyed seeing this season, which is the Bad Batch helping folks with situations that aren't Imperial related. Like in this one, we have the tsunami coming, and it just was made for a great episode. It was fun. It was good. And it just, we could go on for hours about the animation, especially the sunset with the lights coming on throughout the island. Oh, gorgeous. But But let's go ahead and jump into our talking points for this thing, because there are some repercussions in this, things that happen that will have repercussions going forward throughout the storyline. And I want to make sure we give those topics their due. And the first one really is right there at the beginning after they do this job for Fee. They end up on the Marauder flying, and they end up getting this recorded message from Sid, which is basically threatening them because she hasn't heard from them in 20 rotations, and she's, according to Fee, not somebody you want to cross.
Right.
So we're now have the situation. We saw the beginning of it an episode or two ago when she abandoned them on that planet, stranded. But we're seeing the fallout from this with the rift between them and Sid. Want to get your thoughts on this whole situation with Sid, because she obviously is definitely got her underhanded side, which we always kind of knew was there, but we're now starting to see rear its ugly head at our heroes here.
I'm so done with Sid, to be quite honest. I spent the entire first season of the series giving her the benefit of the doubt, and I really enjoyed that aspect of her character. Do we trust her? Is she even worthy of trust? And going back and forth to, sure, I can put some trust into her, and I can back the batch if they want to keep working for her, and then flipping over to, no, I'm not so sure anymore. Then earlier this season, we get that awesome episode where they're doing the riot racing, right? And we learn a lot about Sid, which was very cautionary. And then from then on, I'm just sort of waiting, because I'm sort of now in the mind frame of she's not going to have their back. That's sort of the way I'm looking at it now. She could still come through. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm just that type of person. But the episode where she left them stranded after they got their ship stolen, first of all, that was a huge warning flag. And then this one, she outright threatens them. And not only does she threaten the Bad Batch, the quote unquote the boys, but she threatened Omega, because by making a difference in knowing what she knows about the boys and not just the boys, she said something to that effect, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's one thing to not prioritize your group of mercenaries that are going out and doing jobs for you when they get their ship stolen and say, hey, you guys are resourceful, figure it out. It's another thing to outright threaten them, especially knowing now what we know, where the Empire and the cloning, Mount Tantus, I believe it is, and yep. Dr. Hemlock, they now have a vested interest in finding Omega. And that line by Sid really perked my ears and became quite worrisome for me, that whole little interchange there from that message on the ship.
Oh, definitely. This is definitely complicated their lives more than I think they even more than they realize. This little spat with Sid. I mean, of course, they could always make up and make amends, but I don't see it going in that direction.
I agree personally. With you.
I think this spat with Sid is what's going to end up getting the Imperials on their back again. When it comes to Omega. So it's gonna be interesting to see how this plays out through the rest of the season, and hopefully, fingers crossed, season 3 if we get it.
I'd love that. Oh boy, I would love that.
That's one reason I cannot wait for Celebration. I need to know what they're going to say at that Bad Batch panel, because like you said earlier, I'm an animation guy. I'm a Star Wars animation guy. I eat if given the choice, if somebody hands me the road, all right, turn on anything Star Wars you want, I'm turning on Rebels. I mean, that's just who I am.
You can't go wrong with that. You cannot go wrong with that.
I will go animation, Star Wars animation, because it has never failed. Even Resistance wasn't well received, but it was still a phenomenal show that tackled some intense issues for a kid show, and it was literally slated to be a kid show. It was pointed at 9-year-olds, and it tackled some deep issues that you wouldn't expect for a kid show. But I really need them to continue the Bad Batch. So here's fingers crossed for Celebration. Now, this whole situation with Sid seems to be opening up another door with Genoa Fee, because they're with her on this mission. They've worked a couple missions in the past with her, and in the past it's kind of like, okay, well, what kind of character is this truly? We were kind of bordering on just a go-getter, a grave robber, and now we're looking at, okay, well, maybe she's almost, the whole meeting at the beginning kind of had that the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom feel to it when they're negotiating there in Club Obi-Wan, to me a little bit. But we got to see a side of her that I honestly did not expect to see, especially when she finds out they're basically at odds with Sid. She then decides to take them somewhere safe, somewhere that only she knows. Whether Sid knows or not, we're not 100% sure, but I doubt she would have taken them there if Sid knew about it. And we see a side of her unlike no other. I mean, we see her, they arrive, she gives what they just fought for to this little young girl. She's talking to she knows everybody there. I mean, this is an insane place to be. We see a kindness, a gentleness to her that we had not seen before. Especially, I mean, in the one scene that pops out into my mind, which I want to talk about in depth here shortly, is in her interactions with Tech as the sun is setting, getting him to take his eyes off the technology and to see the beauty before him. I mean, it's a side that I did not expect to see to this character, which adds a whole new complexity to it. What are your thoughts on Genoa Fee as we're looking at this? Is she a pirate? Is she a good-hearted person? What's your thoughts on Fee?
My first reaction, my first initial impression is, wow, sassy, fast talking, put your guard up, bring your defenses out, right? Because she's just not intimidated whatsoever by the Batch at all, in this first episode. And then once we get into the second episode that we see her in is when they go and they're trying to do the whole Tomb Raider thing with that big massive machine, which I thought was such a cool episode. Then she became intriguing. She had some depth and layers to her. She seems like she cares genuinely, number one, about Omega. And it's easy to care about Omega. No one would question as to why someone is caring for Omega. But she also seems to care for the Batch, for the Clone Force 99. And I don't know why that is, and I don't really care too much. But she does seem, especially now after this episode, she seems to want the best for them, because it seems like a very intimate place that she took them. If she had any ulterior motives, she's going basically to her family. She doesn't outright call them their family, but for all intents and purposes, where she went was her family, and she took them there for reasons like you said. So a pirate, can you ever trust a pirate? I don't know, but we all loved Hondo, right? Yeah, we all loved Hondo. He's going to do what Hondo's going to do, and it may not always be great for the characters that we love, but we ended up all loving Hondo, and I'm feeling the same way or similarly with Fee, because she does seem to have the right, her heart seems to be in the right place, and we haven't seen anything out of her that would betray that. So I'm on board with her being a good person for this group of characters. Now, if you put her into another scenario with other characters, maybe she's more self-serving, but it seems like she has a soft spot for these characters, and so do I. So I'm all for it. I'm Team Fee.
Yeah, she is definitely took them somewhere special. You could tell it was a home for her, with people she cared about, and obviously, I don't think she would have done that if there wasn't that soft side to her that cared for Hunter and Wrecker. And from the episodes we've seen with Vienna, it almost seems she has a soft spot for Tech, because she does have some throughout the episode she's been in. She's had these interactions with Tech that have just kind of been more of a mentoring and get out of your shell type thing.
She likes her some Tech. It's very clear. It's almost flirtatious to the point where, not that Tech is flirting with her, because I'm not sure Tech is capable of that, but she's quite flirtatious with Tech, and I love it. I think that's great, especially because of how awkward Tech is in that kind of thing, and his personal abilities for communication and whatnot. But yeah, she certainly likes her some Tech, and it almost seems like by the end of this episode, he seems to be reciprocating some of that, and I loved how they pulled that off.
Yes, absolutely. And that's where I was driving, because we're seeing, and there's one thing I've loved about this season, we're seeing a growth in the character of Tech, where he's starting to be more than this, basically a mindless drone of technology. We've seen it started on there at the beginning when they were on the planet trying to take the Imperial on Serrano, when they were trying to steal the Dooku's treasures from the Empire, and the one lone Serrano person just talked to him, and he began to realize, the Separatists were more than the droids we were fighting. They were real people. And then with Omega, when Echo left, the connection he was making with Omega, opening up and having that conversation about feelings, and it just was a huge growth. And then in here, in this episode, we're talking about the crew on Pabu. We're seeing them all start to fit in their own little right. Wrecker is loving the food. He says for the first time, I'm full. And Tech's like, well, let me jot this down for history. And
I'm never full.
I'm never full. And then they bring out dessert.
But he has room for the dessert. He has room for the dessert.
It's like my kids always say, my kids will feed them dinner, and all of a sudden they're about halfway through. I'm stuffed. I'm full. All right, you can be done. No more. Don't eat anymore. But you're not getting dessert. Well, my food is side of my stomach's full, but my dessert side is empty. Yeah,
I love that.
But that's what it reminded me of with Wrecker, and with the dessert, when they brought the dessert out for Wrecker, reminded me of my kids.
Can I tell you? I have to tell you. Like, Wrecker's been my guy from their introduction in the Clone Wars. Like, Wrecker, he just tickles me. I love that. I love that he's so what you see is what you get, right? He just makes me laugh almost every time he's on the screen. This episode was no exception. And that food scene, Aaron, I mean, I felt seen. I'm like, oh, Wrecker, you know me. I know you too. Yes, I finished the food on my plate, but then the waiter comes up and says, any room for dessert? The answer is yes, Aaron.
Yes,
I mean, come on. And Wrecker knows. So I have my Wrecker Funko Pop sitting right here to my right, and he's my guy. He just cracks me up.
I love it. That's awesome. He has been, I will say, he has been my favorite from the beginning too. He's been that steadfast, just comedic brute, to put it
exactly.
And that just, no matter the situation, I can always know I'm going to crack a grin at some point because of Wrecker, and it makes it great. Oh, but fabulous. So, but we're seeing a lot happening on this planet, and I mean, we'd be dismissed to talk about the circumstances that led to the end of the episode and their decision to stay, which of course would be those devastating tremors that happened, which apparently were commonplace when we find out as characters are talking. Which, by the way, I thought. I have to point out that, of course, the elderly citizen on Pabu that we meet, voiced by Zeb Aurelius himself, Steve Bloom,
who also he voiced the character in the beginning. I believe his name was Crowder, the guy they were doing the deal with. He also did that. Yeah, always good to have good old Zeb back in Star Wars animation. Sign him up for all of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's Steve Bloom is just so much fun to hear him voice. And it's one of those characters. He's got one of those voices that as soon as you hear it, doesn't matter how he's got it disguised, but as soon as you hear it, you're like, hey.
That's right.
So, but
good old Zara Greb.
Exactly. So we have the tremors, and of course that triggers this massive tidal wave. And we, of course, through the course of the show, we found out that the civilization that had developed, this city of imperial refugees, as we find out they are, is basically lives at the top of this mountain, which is an island sticking out of the water. But after the years they've grown so much, they've started settling the lower lands, which had never happened before. Well, of course, the reason was because these tidal waves come every so often, and apparently it had been 30 years since the last one. So fortunately it comes, and fortunately Clone Force 99 is there, and they're able to split up. Hunter goes and rescues Omega out at sea, who's in the boat trying to get back to shore, while everybody else is helping the citizens evacuate the lower part of the city, get up to higher ground. And they do it successfully before the tidal wave hits. And Star Wars fashion, everybody seems to survive.
As it should be.
As it should be. Everybody survives, but the devastation is there. The wave came, crashed into the island. The whole city was underwater for what probably was longer than we had saw, because it was just literally looked like it didn't last that long. I think that was just for storytelling purposes, but definitely would have devastated the lower part of the city. So can
I just tell you
go right ahead.
that I really appreciated just sort of the scene that was leading up to that whole thing, because I live in the Los Angeles area. People do like to call it earthquake country.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone quite a while without a big devastating one. Thank God for that. But I can tell you, we do have our fair shares of smaller tremors from here and there. But the fact that they started that whole sequence with the animals reacting, I thought was just such a subtle and cool thing. And I'll tell you the truth, my mind first went to earthquake, but then it quickly moved to like, oh, wait a minute. Well, maybe a monster, something under the ground. But then as it continued on, and Hunter picked up on it immediately, and then he went to look out over the ocean, and then you could see it was just such a slight movement of the lamps that were behind Wrecker. And then that's when I was like, oh no, they're gonna have an earthquake. So as someone who's gone through it, I thought that those very subtle details were handled so well, and probably were written and designed by people who have gone through it too, because they did their attention to detail just in those 2 or 3 little hints at what was to come was really, really good. And then of course we see the cracking of the walls, and we get that tremor, which was sort of a precursor, also very accurate to how earthquakes can and do happen. But then the added twist of the sea surge, which was just this whole phenomenon where the water is being pulled out and then being pushed in, I thought was really, really compelling. And of course the animation, we've talked about it, was incredible. but just the whole idea of this lower portion of Pabu being in danger because of not an earthquake but a sea surge, I thought was really a really cool storytelling choice. I really enjoyed it. I really liked that. It added a lot of unexpected drama because you knew something was going to happen. These poor characters can't go anywhere without something happening, right?
Exactly.
But I never expected it to be a natural disaster. It's always some monster or the Imperials coming along or something along those lines. But this was really unexpected, and I thought was really, really cool. Very interesting storytelling choice.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why I liked this episode as much as I did, because it wasn't Imperial related. Because when it all first started, I was thinking, same thing along the lines of you. Oh man. First I thought it was a ship coming in to land. I'm like, oh, right, here come the Imperials.
Yep.
Then it was okay. Well, maybe there's a secret Imperial installation. Something's drilling up from underground. We'll have a bunch of battle droids pop out or something. No, that's not it. Then also they start talking about tremors happening, and then they're looking out at sea, and I'm going, okay, we actually are dealing with natural disasters, which is different. But I hate to use the word good, but for storytelling purposes, it was good. It really was.
Absolutely.
So,
and in a saga which takes place in space, you can only have so many disasters in space. But the beautiful thing about this galaxy, it's peppered with thousands, not hundreds of thousands, of different planets and moons in these systems, where you go to these planets and the storytelling possibilities are absolutely endless, because one day we're talking about a lava planet, and the next day we're talking about a water planet and an ice planet and a desert planet, and all these things can come with different storytelling possibilities. And there was nothing specific to this planet that would indicate an earthquake or a sea surge, but just the idea of that I just thought was really creative.
It truly was. It truly was. And, my hat's off to the creative team behind Bad Batch. They have done such a fabulous job with this series, with this season, and a fantastic job with this episode. So, bravo to them. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up our discussion here. Were there any talking points that we didn't get to that maybe you wanted to hit on before we go into our final reactions?
Just any chance I get, I love to geek out about how beautiful the water is in this in this series. Not just this episode, but there was an episode, and here I go again. I'm going to geek out about animated water. Every time I start doing this, I just think to myself, "What are you talking about, Colby?" But I just keep talking. So there was an episode last season. I believe it was the one where they went to that junkyard planet where they all took the chips out of their heads.
Yes.
There was water in that. And that was the first time that I actually had to stop and I took notice about how beautiful the water was, because we didn't get that in Rebels and the Clone Wars. And I sort of thought to myself, am I paying too much attention to water? I mean, come on. And then it's gone into, of course, the season finale, right, of last season, the whole ocean planet, Kamino. Mm-hmm. But then they started out this season on a beach, doing a job on the beach. And then again, here we've got this whole water thing. And then I read somewhere on Twitter, one of the animators or one of the people behind the show, I'm sorry, I don't know their name, talked about, maybe it was Pablo Hidalgo on Twitter. He talked about how difficult it has been to perfect animation for water specifically. And I sort of felt justified. I said, okay, so I can geek out about how beautiful this looks. It's not just me being weird. This is a real thing. It's an actual accomplishment. And, hats off to them, because everything looks so great. But anytime they put water in an episode, I'm just like, oh gosh, that looks so good. So thank you for indulging me on my water geek out.
No worries. Cause it is like we've said, the animation in this series, it's just been incredible. And this episode has probably been the best we've seen in the series, and probably in Star Wars animation altogether, because it was just absolutely gorgeous, picturesque. It's definitely somewhere you'd want to go visit, and go on vacation and retire to. And run away from the Empire and hide at. So, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. So,
Here you go, Disney Imagineers. Build us a Pabu, please.
oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, that would make a great beach resort.
You guys could pull that off in
They
Florida.
could. We could. We really could. And Cocoa, they could do it over at Cocoa Beach, or you want to keep it a little ways from Daytona. Daytona's too crowded. But get Cocoa, or yeah.
Just leave out the Tremors. Leave out the Tremors and the Sea Surge. We'll take that off the menu.
We do get the Sea Surge when the hurricanes come through. We do get those, but and St. Pete actually even did have a earthquake at one point, I remember, in my lifetime. But hey,
it happens. It does.
It happens. So, all right. Well, we'll jump into our final reactions real quick. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with that. I don't like this episode. It was fun. It didn't do much in the way of building the ultimate storyline, but it got the ball rolling with Sid and possibly a home. Like, I like how you said that, a home for our heroes there on Pabu. But I know we haven't seen the last of Sid. She's going to play a definite thorn in the flesh bad guy for the Bad Batch in the coming episodes. But it was good. I really liked how it was doing the whole sequence at the beginning while they're pulling the job for Sid. That was just a fun. I think I mentioned it earlier. It reminded me a lot of the opening scene of Temple of Doom when the Indy's fighting everybody in Club Obi-Wan.
Yep.
Just a lot of great stuff in there. I love, and I said this earlier, and I'm going to say it again, I really love how they are working the character of Tech, making him look past the technology, sharing his emotions, trying to connect on a different level with the people he's interacting with. It to me, it's probably some of the most complex character growth we're seeing in the series so far is through the character of Tech, and I'm loving it because I'll be honest, when this show started, he was my least favorite of the guys. He was my least favorite, but now he has grown so much that I'm really looking forward to see what they're doing next with him, how he's going to open up next, and I'm becoming more and more attached to this character because, he's just an incredible character. And I'm relating more and more to him. He's they're trying to get him to put down the technology and look at the world around him, which honestly is something we really all need to do nowadays.
How's that for some meta commentary, right?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. It's just, when she was telling him to put the pad down and just watch, I'm like, man, I need to put my phone down and just watch. It really connect. I'm connecting more with Tech than I ever dreamed I would when this show started, and I'm loving it. Animation was gorgeous. Animation was beautiful. Kevin Kiner's music, incredible as always. Just an awesome, good episode. So, Colby, what are your final reactions for Pabu?
I'll piggyback a little bit onto the 2 points you just made here. First, about Tech. He's a completely different character. And Crosshair was on the bottom of my list when we first met the Bad Batch back in Clone Wars season 7. But he's become very compelling through this season too. But Tech, he has grown. I think you said it, and I agree with you. He's grown more than any other character, with the exception of Omega. He's a different character now. He's in the best possible way, in my opinion. It's just a wonderful growth to see. And you can't appreciate that unless you have these types of episodes where we see that kind of growth. And I eat that stuff up. The other thing that you mentioned was Kevin Kiner and the Kiner brothers, because I don't know who has what responsibility or how they divide the workload, but those two people, or maybe it's more, I don't even know, but we'll just go with Kevin Kiner. he's the John Williams of Star Wars animation. I mean, and I don't say
Yes.
that lightly, because John Williams is a hero of mine. But this man and his team, boy, oh boy, give him awards. Give him all the awards, because his score to each episode is as moving as anything else in Star Wars. And Star Wars has some incredible composers now, which I'm just eating up. He's at the top of the class. He's the gold standard. And boy, every single episode, he just brings it. They all do. So, I'm glad you mentioned him, because he deserves that recognition. As far as the episode goes itself, final thoughts from my perspective is that all the pieces are in place. I feel like the table, is set for the final stretch of this season. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's 3 episodes left over the course of 2 weeks, because the last 2 are going to be dropped on the same week. And I don't know what else needs to happen for the race to the end of the season to be complete, right? This was a wonderful sort of a palate cleanser, almost like a breath of fresh air, and a moment for us to relax for a moment in this episode before the whole natural disaster. But those 10 minutes of this episode before the tremors and the sea surge almost was like a moment for the fandom to sit back, take a breath, look at the beautiful sunset, because we're heading to the home stretch now. I don't know what to expect, but I'm sure it's going to be fast and furious. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what's happening after this very relaxing, and it was even a hopeful episode. This episode gave me hope that there's a place for these characters to go if there's nowhere else for them to go, if you catch my meaning. So just a really beautiful cap to what is probably going to lead us into the final stages of this season. And I'm psyched. I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. Sign me up and give me season 3.
Amen to that. Give me season 3. Oh, well, everybody, as we normally do, we like to grade the episodes that we review around here. Just like if you're in school, you get an A, B, C, D, or an F. For me, good episode, a lot of great stuff in it. I did enjoy it. It's to me, it's a B plus. Not the best episode we've had all year this season. It's not the best episode we've had of the series, but it was a good episode. I really enjoyed it. B plus for me. How would you grade the episode, Colby?
So, as usually is the case, I usually start out with 1 grade, and then going through discussions like this with yourself or other smart Star Wars people like yourself, I typically find things that will then adjust my grade once the talking through it process has ended. And I was also going to give this a B plus. But I would ask for your indulgence once more, because I think I'm going to bump it up to an A, just a solid A. We're not talking about A plus material, but just the animation, the sounds, and the music alone, and the feeling of tranquility there in that middle section of the episode were just, to me, it was masterful. So for that reason, I'm going to go with an A.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. You're awesome. No worries. Change the grade all you want. We want to hear from you. Let us know what you thought of Pabu. You can let us know on any of our social media channels. We are on Twitter and Facebook at SW Reactions Pod, Pinterest, Instagram, and Tumblr, where you'll find all of our show notes at SW Reactions. Or, of course, you can email us, swreactions@gmail.com, any time of the day. So there. Colby, take a few minutes. Tell us about the ColbyCast. Tell us about your show, how they can find it, how they can find you on social, and how people can listen and follow up with you on their thoughts and feelings about Star Wars or Pabu.
Absolutely, Aaron. Thank you very much first for having me on. It's a pleasure. I hope Mr. Modders enjoys his time away with family and friends, and hope that I was able to to plug myself in there and do a worthy job there. So thank you for having me on. Yes, you mentioned the ColbyCast. That is my podcast where I sit down and for 99% of the time have discussions with my two 20-something year old sons in their early 20s. And we talk about everything. You can just put an underline there on everything. It's like basically like what we do when we're sitting around the living room on the couch. And my wife said, you guys should record this and you should put it out there. And I said, okay. And we do that. So we talk about Star Wars a lot, because we love Star Wars. We talk about Marvel. We talk about the MCU, not necessarily the comics, because not a big, huge comic person, but the MCU, DC movies, music, TV shows. We just finished talking about The Last of Us. We talked about House of the Dragon, Stranger Things. So anything that comes on our radar that we know is popular, we watch it, we talk about it. I love hearing my son's perspective because, I'm in my late 40s. I'm the old man yelling at clouds, and they're the two that are making fun of me for doing it. So, we like to laugh, we like to have fun, and we like to appreciate the hard work that goes into telling all these stories. So you can find that on any podcatcher. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything. So just look for The ColbyCast. We're also on Twitter, same thing, at The ColbyCast. We're on Hive and Instagram at The ColbyCast. It's all spelled out just like it sounds, although Colby may be a little difficult because, there's a lot of variations out there. Anyway, it's COLBY. But yeah, absolutely. Reach out, send me an email at thecolbycast@gmail.com. And I would love to talk about Star Wars with any and all of you. So, Aaron, again, thank you so much for having me on. It was truly a pleasure and well overdue. I'm so glad we were able to connect.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you were able to join me. I do greatly appreciate it. We've been trying to do this for a while, and I'm glad it finally was all the stars lined up and made it happen. So we'll definitely have to get you back on when David's back, because I know he'd love to have a conversation with you as well about Star Wars, because it's one of the joys. One of the joys of life is just sitting around talking with friends. So
I'd love that. Absolutely.
Well, we end the show every week the same way, and since David's not here, you get the blessing of either enjoying or dying a little bit on the inside to my Star Wars dad joke of the week. And I keep saying I need to get a theme song for that and a little ditty or something, and I haven't done it yet. I need to get on that. But are you ready for this week's dad joke?
Let me have it.
All right, here we go, everybody. How do you unlock doors on Kashyyyk?
How?
With a Wookiee.
That's terrible. That's terrible, and I love it.
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's good. Oh, with a Wookiee. With a Wookiee.
Bravo.
Oh, bravo. Oh, Colby, again, my friend, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a blast. It has been great. I greatly appreciate you jumping in with me. Thank you, everybody, for listening in this week. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Y'all are the best. We're praying for y'all. Take care of yourselves. Do something good for somebody this week. Change somebody's life for the better. It'll not only make their lives better, it'll make yours better. So do something nice for somebody. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions, elegant discussion for a more civilized age.